I'm joined today by Karl Akueson, founder and CEO of Switch Metals. Thanks for joining me, Karl.
Hi, Darren. Thanks for having me.
So, Karl, for those new to Switch, can you give us a brief overview of the company, please?
Yes, of course. Switch is a company that was admitted to AIM about a year ago in April 2025. We are a company focused on critical metals in Côte d'Ivoire, in West Africa, and we have a particular focus on tantalum, and of course the associated elements of tantalum, including lithium, niobium, and other rare earth metals.
Hmm. Okay. So you have some project diversity, which is good, with the tantalum and the lithium. Many listeners will understand the case for lithium, but can you tell us why the company is tantalum focused? What's its key uses?
Tantalum is a very interesting metal. I'm sure that we're all overwhelmed with the comment about how metals are critical nowadays, but this is a metal that it ticks two boxes for us. One is
Hmm.
its physical and chemical properties. So that's the in situ uh, uh, value of the metal itself, but it also ticks another important box, which is supply constraints and how we can supply something that is currently constrained out there, particularly when it comes to tantalum. So on the physical chemical properties, it's anti-corrosive, heat resistant, one of the highest melting point metal, above 3,000 degrees, and for that reason, it's used in many industries,
Hmm.
particularly in the defense industry, the medical industry, but more importantly in the electronics industry. Every anything electronic that you use, whether that's your phone, your laptop, any other equipment, artificial intelligence, semiconductors will have some tantalum in them, and that's a key use, and it's one that where tantalum can be replaced in a cost-effective way. So that ticks one box for us. The second is
Hmm.
the current supply is mostly controlled by DRC and Rwanda in the conflict area, and that's 60 to 70% of the current supply coming from that area. So it's complicated now for the buyers to get their hands on traceable tantalum. And we have a great opportunity because we have some tantalum in Cote d'Ivoire and we're unveiling that potential. And we have all of it sitting within our company, at least for a couple of hundred square kilometers. And in
Yeah.
addition to that, we have very little artisanal mining, so we can trace it all and make it ethical.
Hmm. So is the tantalum market then, is it a bit like, say, like the tin market? Is it sort of quite tight and there's a limited number of producers?
Oh, you do have some similarities. I mean, you would have sometimes the buyers of tantalum would be the same buyers as the ones for tin and tungsten. They
Okay.
generally call it the three T's. So they'll buy tin, tungsten, and tantalum from either the same supplier or from different sources. In our case, our main product is tantalum. It is so there are a lot of similarities, especially when you touch on the electronics industry use of tin as well. So, but the difference there is the value of the metal, and in the case of tantalum, you're talking about something that trades currently in the range of 250,000 to 300,000 US dollar per ton. Uh,
Right.
for tin, we're talking about 45, to 50,000 right now. So they have different values. One is and one is more is harder to replace in terms of supply. Tin, you still have it in other places than DRC, Rwanda. Tantalum, it's a bit more complicated.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, that's a lot per ton.
No,
I was going to ask, I was going to ask you like,
it's quite an expensive high value, I mean expensive for the buyers and a high value metal for us producers. I mean it's we're very happy to have it in our portfolio in a country that allows us to sell it at potentially at a premium because it's going to be a conflict free source.
yeah, yeah, okay. Um, I mean, I was going to ask you like, what could the margins look like? But I guess it's a bit, I don't know if it's early days for you to be able to even
No,
work,
we
work,
can
work.
we can comment on that. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't give numbers yet. I mean, we still have to go through the work, and that's what we're doing now. And then we're
Mm,
going to do a study that would have all of that later in the year. But for now, what I can give you is conceptually, we have the advantage of having alluvial, shallow, pre-dig, floating material. So that's basically tantalum floating and very near surface down
Mm.
to 5 meters. So you can think about it like a heavy minerals project where you're looking at something sitting in the soils that you would then very cheaply mine, excavate, and wash and process using gravity separation, which doesn't involve any chemicals, it doesn't involve any crushing in our case. And as a startup production strategy, that's generally a high margin production that we're envisaging here. So the advantage, and that's why in DRC Rwanda, this kind of material has been mined mostly by the artisanals and still making money. I mean, if we do it at the scale we're envisaging, we have the same advantage of starting with something that is very near surface, that can be processed with simple technology and very high margins, and become a good cash flow play for us that we can then keep
Mm.
building the company upon.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got a number of projects. Some are tantalum focused, some are lithium, some are both. What stages are these projects at the moment? Are you currently defining resources, or are they more advanced?
Yes, we have 3 projects
Yeah.
today. The priority asset, the flagship is the ISIA project. That's the one that we've been communicating the most on. That's the one where we spent most of our exploration efforts in the past year and even
Yeah.
before IPO. ISIA is a tantalum focused asset. That's where we have the low hanging fruit that I just mentioned for early production, and that's the coltan alluvial material that we're currently doing first resource on. So we're expecting to complete our MRE this quarter. That would be the first MRE for ISIA. It's not going to be the last one. We'll have some additions to that over the months that follow and the years
Yeah.
that follow. But we've decided to have a very pragmatic approach at ISIA because we see this early cash flow potential. We want to start production as quickly as possible, and we have an opportunity to do that considering what's happening in Eastern Africa. We want to be quick and fast. Basically, we want to be fast to market. So because that's our strategy, we're doing the MRE. Later in the year, we will follow that up with a scoping study. That scoping study would form the basis of us applying for mining license as quickly as possible before year end or early next year,
Mm.
and start construction within 2027 with an objective to start production very quickly in 2027 as soon as we have the mining license and construct, which should be a short construction period. Our objective is still to get first concentrate to clients before 2028, ideally in 2027. So that's the plan at ISIA, and we're accelerating that. The MRE is work is well advanced. Today we've completed about 40% of that effort, and we will carry on pressing the button on that. The second asset is Casale.
Mm.
That's a pure lithium spodumene asset in the right location, very near the capital city with a mineral port. We have neighbors such as Atlantic Lithium becoming active next to us. We also have Ganfeng in a joint venture with a Canadian listed company, or about to be listed company, called Lithium Africa. They're both active near us. It's the right place to look for lithium spodumene in Côte d'Ivoire. And we're doing some soil sampling there, and we will keep delineating some drill targets in that area. At ISIA, before I forget to touch on that, we do have
Mm.
found recently, we bumped into some spodumene as well. So it's definitely adding a lot of value to that asset, despite the focus being on the tantalum MRE.
Yeah.
ISIA has some lithium potential that we will keep proving in the next few weeks as well. The last asset is Boake, and that's a complementary coltan tantalum asset that we're working on in the background. It's too early, but it has some potential to add some scale to our future tantalum production, and that's probably something that we will do as a third priority this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned coltan there. Is that just a collective word for tantalum and niobium, is it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I simplify it slightly by saying tantalum, but effectively, tantalum comes in the form of coltan, and
Yeah.
coltan is a mix. It's a nodule, or a piece of gravel that is actually a blend between tantalum and niobium. Coal is columbite, tan is tantalite. Columbite and tantalite are effectively niobium and tantalum minerals.
Okay.
but we can simplify it as tantalum because that's the main product and that's the main paid for metal in our future production.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of scale then, or potential scale of the projects, I know obviously you're in early days, you're defining the mineral resource, but do you have any feel for like how large these projects could be and how they might compare to other projects, globally?
Yes, I mean we're starting to see the potential at ISIA and for ISIA to become a district scale asset. I mean, first we have a large land package. We cover over 1,000 square kilometers of ground at ISIA. I mean, the first license we're working on is 112 square kilometers, and that's where we're doing systematic work now. But other licenses are under application, and we will expand our footprint at ISIA. I mean, our active footprint. So in terms of scale, we have one of the largest land packages in West Africa for both tantalum and lithium. In the case of tantalum, we have probably the largest land package for a single company that focuses on that metal in I would say in Africa and maybe even in the world. We we
Okay.
we have a lot to cover. If you do a parallel between what we're covering here in Côte d'Ivoire and what has been mined to supply 60 to 70% of the market in DRC and Rwanda, you basically have a fifth of the current 60 to 70% in terms of ground size and potentially sitting in our assets in terms of scale. Now it's for us to demonstrate that scale comes with more production, and that's the work we're starting to do now. But our positioning has been great in the past years. We're very happy to have that clean base and that we can then explore and of course make sure that our buyers get some ethical production out of this country versus the thousands and thousands of artisanal miners supplying them today from DRC and Rwanda.
Mm. Okay, some potentially significant resource sizes then. In terms of the ability to execute, obviously a very important thing. It's great having good projects and being in a decent location, what have you. But obviously, a management team is the key to actually getting the strategy delivered. How are how's your management team made up? Have you got a strong team and are they experienced?
Yes, we have a very strong team. I won't start by over promoting myself, but first we have a team that has we have a team that has country experience. I mean, I myself I'm based in Côte d'Ivoire. I've been here for 13 years now, and I'm an Ivorian national, and I know the country. It's not my first mining venture. I started a company called Awali Resources that is a gold exploration company that has had its success. It's listed on the TSX, but that was my first venture. So I've done it before, and now I'm trying to work and redo the same thing with a different metal, being tantalum. So that's the first step. So we have country experience. There's some board members who also have country experience, African experience, London listed companies experience, ASX companies listed experience, and of course mining experience. When it comes to then the execution of our programs, we also have a very strong team, a mix of English and francophone background and geologists, technicians, being mostly Ivorian, on the ground full time, and they've all done it before. So we're really strong on that front, and of course as we grow, we will keep adding some skills.
And Côte d'Ivoire itself, it's a mining friendly sort of country, is it?
Yes,
Yep.
it's probably one of the most one of the preferred jurisdictions in Africa to date, based on all the rankings you can look at. The country has been known more for its gold potential than its tantalum potential, but
Mm.
that's just because gold has been the priority, not because tantalum wasn't there. Or lithium wasn't there. So in our case, we're very happy to be in this country. As I said, I'm from here, and for the fact that I'm living here is probably a good indication that I'm comfortable operating in this country, and I think it's the right place to do business. The country is definitely growing its mining potential and revenue, and it's stable. So
Mm.
that's a very important thing to mention. When you say West Africa today, not all countries have that advantage, and Cote
Yeah.
d'Ivoire is definitely one that is stable, and its infrastructure is not comparable to a lot of the surrounding countries or the typical, African or West African infrastructure that you will see. It has energy. It's a net exporter of energy to surrounding countries. It has roads. It has ports, two mineral ports, etc. So a good and human resources. So a good place to operate.
Hmm. Okay. So obviously, I think we touched on this slightly, but it's definitely an emerging theme now for junior miners. I think just because of it's the sheer amount of money you have to raise for a full-blown project. To be looking at sort of fast track production, with initial operations being of a smaller scale to start generating cash flow. So that's definitely something that's in your strategy, is it? You want to try and get something up and running quicker than it would be to do a bigger operation and just start generating that cash and then allow yourself to expand organically. Is that right?
Yes, that's our strategy. I mean, I must say that it's not just a trend that we're following. It's always been part of our strategy, even when we're a private company. We
Mm,
probably guided by the metal that we're chasing. I mean, the fact that we're focused on tantalum is definitely helping us in understanding how we should develop this. Just because in historically this type of projects and especially the shallow free dig ones have been mined manually, I would say, in DRC and Rwanda, and the fact that we see the same material here gives us the opportunity of thinking something relatively easier to execute than your typical mining project. So we have had that as part of our strategy from day one. We're executing on that. I think on top of having the strategy and the thinking small scale startup, etc. One thing that we think we have a big chance of achieving is execution. So I think that's where a lot of the juniors with that strategy, on top of mentioning it and presenting it as part of their goals, the execution part is where we will all get judged. And we
yeah.
have started on the execution of that, and we want to do it properly, therefore the MRE, right? So you need to start and do these things properly, otherwise they catch back. Smaller could be more risk, and you still need to tick some boxes, and we've been very fast at doing that. And we have the advantage of having buyers for any size product that we could envisage producing, which is not always the case when you're thinking small scale for other metals. If you're
Yeah.
doing small scale copper or small scale iron ore or small scale something else, you're probably going to struggle a bit to get the interest of a real buyer. In the case of tantalum,
Mm,
we have that opportunity because every kilogram is of value to
yeah.
us, but also to the buyer, because it's such an expensive metal for them to buy. So if they can source it, especially if it's ethical, from a traceable source, they will come and we will be able to sell.
I'm guessing that's why, as a company, you've chosen the tantalum route because we don't hear there's plenty of junior mining companies on the ASX, the TSX, the London market, but we certainly don't hear much about tantalum. And I'm guessing what you've just said there is that the confidence level in being able to get offtake as soon as you can start producing it is one of the reasons or the key drivers why why you're focusing on tantalum.
Yes,
Mm.
we have buyers' interests already, which I must admit almost came as a surprise when we had the first inbound email and then the follow up discussions. I mean, there is interest from buyers even at a small scale or a startup project, and they're just asking for more. So the
Yeah.
temptation is always to make it bigger, but bigger means longer to market and more expensive to start. So we're trying to be very pragmatic, and we want to have a proof of concept production, make it commercial, make some money, and then grow. And that's the plan.
Will you need to, in terms of met testing, will you, like with off takers, will you need to do any sort of like proof of product with them? I don't know tantalum very well, but I mean say take for example something like graphite. Graphite is a complex product, has various different properties and is suitable for various different purposes. And with graphite, companies very much have to give product and a decent amount of it to off takers before off takers will even get involved in an offtake agreement. Is tantalum a bit more straightforward, or do you have to go through much met testing work with off takers?
Uh, we do have. We do have to send them samples, but
Mm,
the confirmatory work before they can buy is not as complex as what you would see for graphite. And
yeah,
and battery minerals in general. When it almost becomes more a chemical business
Right.
than a mining business. In our case, what they're going to check is basically the level of uranium and thorium that is in the product, which are considered impurities because they're radioactive elements and you can't necessarily transport them. We happen to have very low levels at this stage, and we're very comfortable with that. And the other thing they'll check is definitely the tantalum grade, because they pay you for the tantalum content in your concentrate. So they would want to check that you can supply samples that meet a minimum tantalum grade of 20 to 25%, ideally 30%, and you get paid for that amount. But that's not a long med test exercise,
Mm.
and that's why even in the early days, like now, we're having some interest from potential buyers to send them those samples because they want to make a quick decision. We're trying to, but we're trying to do things in, as I said, we're very pragmatic. We do things in steps. We first need to prove the resource, and then we can have representative samples that could go to buyers and make sure that we get the right feedback. But we're not expecting it to be an annual or
Mm.
even too long in terms of months before we get some off takers lined up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got some interesting projects. Obviously, the tantalum and ISIA seems to be the focus at the moment. What's the priorities for the coming year, and what milestones are you looking to achieve? And how might that translate into news flow?
Yes, the focus is the ISIA project. So that's where we are. As I said, that's where we're spending most of our effort. So the focus there is going to be in the near term to deliver on the MRE, follow that up with a scoping study, use that to start financing discussions, apply for a mining license, and then start construction. Potentially along the way have an off-taker or a strong commercial partner that comes in to help us with even more marketing credibility to make sure we can position the product with the right clients, and make sure that they give us value for the ethical label that we will have on our product. So that's ISIA. In
Mm.
addition to that, at ISIA, as we said, we bumped into a lithium spodumene hard rock target. So that's not the alluvial part, but that's the hard rock potential. We will definitely follow that up. I mean, we're not going to ignore something that interesting. So we will do some work on the lithium potential in parallel to all the tantalum and the MRE focus. So that's ISIA. The second asset is Tiasale. So there we're doing some targeting work.
Mm.
So it's going to be follow-up soil sampling on some existing anomalies, monitor what's happening with our neighbors, whether that's Atlantic or the Ganfeng joint venture. We will delineate some drill targets probably in the next 6 months, and see where we are. And depending on where the lithium market is, we will make a decision on drilling those targets and potentially making a significant lithium discovery. That's the upside there.
Yeah.
And Boake is going to tag along as an addition to ISIA in terms of coltan potential. But first, we need to prove ISIA. That's the priority.
Yeah. Okay. Well, lots going on. Thanks for giving us an update on the projects, Carl. And basically, I look forward to you coming back and talking to us again in the future.
Thanks, Darren. That will be a pleasure. And thanks again for having me.
No problem.